the gospel of the Lord. On the first Sunday of Advent every year, we always consider the second coming of Christ. And today we have this gospel passage that has an interesting verse. It says that 2 men will be out in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. 2 women will be at the mill, one will be taken, and one will be left. And this passage, in part, is part of the reason why some people believe in something called the rapture, which is this idea that Jesus will come in a mysterious way, and the good will be taken away, and the evil will be left. The evil people will be left. And this has been popularized in the last 30 years by a series of books and movies called Left Behind. And the problem, though, is that it's a rather recent interpretation in the last couple hundred years, which is not a good sign. If no one interpreted that verse that way for the first 18 centuries of Christianity, it's probably not a good sign. But also, more importantly, it seems to have the verse exactly backwards, because Jesus seems to be speaking here in the manner of the Old Testament prophets, which is to say that those who are taken are the evil ones, and those that are left are the faithful remnant. So what is Jesus trying to tell us today in this passage? Well, he's trying to tell us that there will come a day when there will be a separation. The good from the evil, the righteous from the wicked, and this will happen to those who are close to us, right? Our own companions, our own family members. Jesus says a little bit later in Matthew's gospel that he will come again in glory, and he will separate the sheep from the goats. He says he will put the sheep on his right, the goats on his left. He will tell those on his right, enter into the kingdom prepared for you. And then he will tell those on his left, depart from me, you accursed, into the eternal fires. And so this is something that we always have to keep in mind. We have to keep it before our eyes always, that there will be a day of judgment for every one of us at the end of our lives individually, and then at the end of history for all of us collectively. And this is what we profess when we recite the creed. We say, he will come again to judge the living and the dead. And if we keep the judgment of Christ before our eyes, it will encourage us to persevere in virtue, and it will help us to turn away from what is evil, because everything in this life comes to an end, joys and sorrows, but eternity never ends. And that's why we have to keep it before our eyes always. And if we do that, then we will always be ready, which is what Jesus wants us to understand from this passage too. He says, at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. And he gives an example of preparedness in Noah. While everyone else was carrying on until the day of the flood, Noah was preparing. He wasn't just sitting around looking up at the sky. He was being obedient to God's commands. And by the time the rain fell and the flood came, it was too late for those who did not make preparations. And those outside the ark were carried away to a watery death. And by the way, the ratio wasn't very good. There was only 8 people on the ark, and the rest of them were lost. And so Jesus gives us as an example of us being prepared for the day of his return. I'll give you another example. I think I've given this one before. There's a priest. He was from Conception Abbey, where I went to school. His name was Father Lucas Etlin, but he lived a long time before I was there. He was a great artist. He was also the chaplain to a convent and a teacher at a girls' academy. And one day he told those young ladies, he said, we must always be ready to die. And that same day, he died in a car accident. And that's the kind of preparedness that we need to have. Now is the time to awake from sleep, as St. Paul says. And during this Advent season, it's a great opportunity to place our house in order, so to speak. Especially if we have not been to the sacrament of confession in more than a year, it's time to stop putting it off. So after Mass today, instead of greeting people, I'll go make myself available in the confessional if you'd like to go to confession. But we all need to prepare for the coming of Christ. We always need to live in this readiness, keeping his judgment before our eyes, and always being filled with confidence and readiness for his return.